From publishing to conference presentations to coursework and exams, starting a PhD program can be overwhelming, especially your first year. So today we are discussing simple and easy things you can do in your first year of your PhD to set yourself up for success and to make sure you excel as a graduate student. And the first thing that you should be doing as a first year in your PhD is networking. So much of academia is about your connections and your support group. And unless you come from a big family of academics, you're probably going to come into your first year without any connections. And while this is very much expected and also very common, it is also something that is very easy to quickly fix. And so in your first year, you're going to want to meet as many faculty as you sustainably can. And this is important because so many opportunities, be them grants or jobs or other things, are done through word of mouth. And so if the people who have the power, which in this case are your faculty, don't know who you are, then they can't help put your name into spaces that can help you get really cool opportunities or access to really good grant or support systems. So it's important that you're putting yourself out there and meeting people and meeting faculty really early within your academic career. This is also important because as a first year, you may have been given an assigned advisor or you may not have an advisor. And so as you are going through your PhD process, eventually you will be needing to build a committee and appoint your permanent advisor. So by meeting as many faculty as you can, specifically within your department, but also across campus, you are setting yourself up for success because you are giving yourself more options and more opportunities to get to know the faculty and the people that may be potential advisors or potential committee members before having to make that really important decision. Now, when I got onto campus, I didn't know anybody and I didn't know much about academia. And I really was worried that people were going to overlook me or not support me, or that I'd be kind of stuck in this ivory tower all alone. And so what I ended up doing within my first year is I worked to try to make sure that I set it up a meeting with a different faculty member every Friday. And I did that for about 10 weeks. And by the end of my first quarter, I had met almost every single person within my department. Actually, I've met with every single person in my department that wasn't on sabbatical. And that gave me a lot of opportunities within our department and also just made existing within the department really positive because there wasn't a place where I could go that there wasn't somebody I would know. And so even outside of opportunities or networking, it made academia or my department feel a lot less daunting and lonely, and more of a space where I felt like people knew who I was, wanted to help me, and were kind. Networking also applies to your peers. Again, all of your opportunities may not come from top-down faculty to you or your chair to you, but may come from your cohort or people who are also in your department. So also trying to participate or go to departmental events or campus events to build your community is one of the most important things you can do as a graduate student, because again, it makes this big academic world feel a lot more small while also giving you resources and people who care about you and your research. And that alone can make succeeding in grad school so much more achievable. Now, the next thing you need to do as a first year PhD is actually a little abstract, but trust me, it is super important. And that is you need to think. Now, of course, as graduate students, we are obviously thinking all the time, but this type of thinking is more about self-reflection and really honing in or focusing on your research. So as you are taking your coursework and getting to meet new people, you want to constantly be reevaluating what is your research focus and what do you care about most. Now, I bring up this thinking as something that you need to do early on, and that's because in my past video where I talk about things that slow down people, one of the main things that slow down graduate students from progressing in their PhD is indecisiveness, not knowing which way they should go, feeling unconfident, and having imposter syndrome. And so by taking time to think and really reflect on your research and your research goals, you are preparing yourself to succeed and progress within normative time because you are giving yourself a chance to hone in on your next steps. And some major questions that you should be asking yourself are, what are 4 major questions that you're hoping to answer with your research? What is it that you hope to contribute through your research or your dissertation, and what makes you and your research special. Now, of course, these questions can sound kind of hippy-dippy or abstract or all of those things, but the reality is these are the most important questions to help you progress. Because even if your focus or your data set or your field location change, if you still know what your main questions are that you are interested in, if you know what you hope your dissertation will provide the world, and you know what makes you and your approaches very special, then regardless of the nitty-gritty details, you can progress or continue towards your graduation date and completing your dissertation. And that's because by focusing on nitty-gritty details, like where you're going to go for your field work, who are you going to interview, what methodologies are you going to do, or what is your main focus, can really slow you down. Because as a first year PhD, and even as like a fourth and fifth year PhD, your topic kind of is constantly changing and transforming and growing and becoming new. And that's a good thing because it's demonstrating that you are learning. But you don't want to get stuck on these nitty-gritty details in such a way that it stops you from being able to proceed. Whereas if you focus on these larger ideological kind of questions, what are your major questions? What do you hope to contribute? What makes you special? Regardless of what the details are, you have a direction to strive towards, and you're able to continue to move through your program. Not to mention, by focusing on these types of questions, you are more prepared to find mentors that are interested in your academic goals. You are also prepared to write grants even within your first year, and all around just progressing through your PhD. The next vital thing you should do as a first year PhD is develop a personalized degree plan. Sure, you know the general requirements of your degree plan, but once you have a good idea of the larger picture of your research, because you just did all of that thinking, then you should try to sit down and develop and draft a very structured plan for you and your academic goals. And you don't want to be just general. You want to try and be as specific as you can. Now, of course, this may shift and change, and you shouldn't put yourself into a situation where you feel like a lot of pressure to achieve everything that you've written down exactly how you've written it down. But you do want to have structured milestones and specific deadlines so you know what you're progressing towards. So major questions or milestones that you may include would be: when will you complete your coursework? When will you take your exams? What or how long do you think it'll take you or hope it takes you to write your dissertation? And what is your projected or goal graduation date? Now, again, this may all change and you really don't know what the process looks like as a first year, but I do have a video that talks all about the PhD process and how to progress through it. So if you want to check that out, feel free. But by writing down a plan that is specific to you, you now have something to work from and strive towards. And this becomes particularly helpful when you are talking to your advisors or your faculty mentors and you're trying to get them to understand what your ideas are and your goals. Now, you can always sit down with them and get their advice or their input and feedback on your degree plan, but it also helps them understand that you have a specific goal that you're working towards, and it can help guide them to give you the resources or the advice or the support to reach your milestones at every step of the way. Now, this next one I think you should actually do every year of your graduate process, but I say it specifically for your first year because a lot of first year students feel intimidated or ill-prepared to do this next step, and that is apply to funding inside and outside of your department and university. And this is because unless you are fully funded, applying to external or internal funding can almost feel like an extra job. And so by really starting off your first year by doing this, you give yourself more opportunities to succeed and actually win funding, and thus take off the burden later on in your graduate process when you're doing things that are more intellectually strenuous, like preparing for your exams or doing your field work or writing your dissertation. So just by starting strong, you are also giving yourself an opportunity to develop the skill sets to write funding. It's really intimidating to have your first grant application be your third or fourth year because you didn't have enough time to get rejected, and it feels a lot more high stakes the further you go in. Whereas if you're writing grants as soon as your first year, you're getting a lot of practice of developing that skill by using that vocabulary or lingo that grant writers like, but also knowing what grants you seem to fit into better and what grants just seem to be out of your scope. And so grants in themselves are really a process, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. So if you're more interested in grad funding, I would check out my grad funding playlist, but definitely spend your first year to apply to at least 1, 2, or 3 grants so you can start off your PhD process on the right foot. Now, this next one I'm actually very excited about because I partly think that by doing this, I was able to progress through my PhD program at a little bit faster rate than my cohort mates. And that is taking at least 1 course out of your department. Now, at first you might be thinking, take a course out of my department, why does that matter? Well, let me tell you why it matters. Like I said earlier, grad school is about who you know and making connections. And by taking courses outside of your department, you are expanding your net or your network and having the opportunity to meet other faculty that may be related to your research or maybe not, but they know another world. They have access to other resources, ideas, ways of thinking. This can also help you as you're in the thinking phase of your research and you're trying to figure out what makes you special, what do you care about, what are your major questions. By taking a course outside of your department, you're giving yourself the opportunity to think outside of the box, to unravel your disciplinary silos, and to look forward at new frontiers. And so by being able to expand your horizons and see what other departments, disciplines, faculty are presenting, it can help you really develop something that is unique, that is significant and exciting, and could make you more competitive for grants, make you more competitive just within your department and support, and it can also help you find other faculty that may be future potential committee members, resources, or mentors. Now, of course, this is all dependent on how much flexibility you have within your program and if you are allowed to take electives and things like that. But if you have the ability and the resources too, I definitely suggest to take courses outside of your department. I almost exclusively took courses outside of my department and then took all of my obvious, required courses within the department. And as a result, I have a large kind of field or community of different types of professors, peers, and colleagues that come from these classes and helps me think about my research in a different way than the ways that we just talk about it within my department. Now, PhDs and their milestones can feel very overwhelming. And if you're interested in more videos like this one where I break down what you can do each year, hit the thumbs up and leave a comment so I can prepare other videos for you. If you're more interested in just PhD basics, I would check out my PhD basics playlist. And as always, your support helps a small YouTuber like me continue to grow. So thank you so much for subscribing and watching, and I will see you next week.